Good afternoon. It is midweek motivation, and I am Sock Marionette on Bargain Counter Argument, a middle-aged lady in a tiara talking about books and stuff. Looks like there's nobody here. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's somebody here watching it back later. I don't know. If you are watching it back later, thank you. We do have somebody here. Lisa's here. Hi, Lisa. It looks like it's maybe just you and me. I don't know. I'm a little bedewed. I thought, oh, it's a nice day. I can have my curtains open, and if there's a breeze, maybe even open my windows, and it'll be nice. And it turns out that I started with all the windows open. It was too bright. I closed some of the curtains. I mean, not all the windows open. The curtains were open. I closed some of them. It was still too bright. I ended up having to close all of them. And I have one floor lamp, and I have a pink robe draped over it. And I feel like I still look really bright. I put on extra bronzer on my forehead, my giant forehead. I feel like I should rent this out. It's like a billboard. And I put extra blush on, and in person I look a little clownish. On camera, at least the way I'm seeing it, I still look like my own ghosty self. Hi, Roxanne. And Lisa says, it's hot here today. You know, I actually, at 1 my time, which was an hour ago. Oh, barkity, barkity, barkity. I got so distracted trying to make my lighting work that I didn't grab any. Oh, Joan's right here. Oh, wait. Rupert is here. I was like, I didn't grab anybody, but then I realized that I was looking for Joan earlier and I couldn't find her. It turns out she's in this corner, and I looked right past her. Barkity. And I even have the majestic moose. This is, I don't know. He is Mike Moose because he's actually one of these very heavy stuffies, and supposedly I could put him in the microwave and warm him up, but I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not. But you could. So he's Mike Moose. Anyway, so yeah, I got to fussing with the lights, and I just anyway, yeah, it was nice here. And I about an hour ago at 1 o'clock my time, Roxy Ann says it is 98 here in California. Hot. Well, in your part of California, yes, but probably not terribly humid. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Anyway, I remember when I lived in Sacramento, I did not struggle with the heat as much as I do here in Connecticut. That is a fact. Of course, I was younger. I moved to Connecticut when I was only like 30, so whatever. And anyway, so I went out after lunch, so about an hour ago, 80 here in Wisconsin, but probably 80, 81, 83. Let me get my glasses. 81, but probably kind of more humid than it might be in Northern California. Yeah, so after lunch, we had herb chicken tortellini in pesto with a side salad. I went to the library to pick up some books I had on the hold shelf. And it was very nice. Everything was nice until I got home. And the only thing was when I left and the house to go to the library, there was a nice breeze. And then when I came home, like 20, 25 minutes later, the breeze had kind of died down. So, but I do have some books that are relevant to the fall challenge that I checked out. That's kind of why I got them. I have a little library haul. I actually got something from the little free library outside the library, which is where they put a lot of the advanced reader copies that they get. And I found this one called It's Me They Follow by Janine A. Cook. And it's coming out, or is it already out? It is coming out September of 2025. I'm not sure what day. It's from Amistad Press, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, and a bewitching novel within a novel, a blend of romance and magical realism in which a shopkeeper becomes a reluctant matchmaker, bringing soulmates together through books. Ooh, I didn't realize this. I just saw I just was glancing at it outside the library and it was like, oh, magical realism, romance, bookshop, whatever. But it's actually matchmaking. So that fulfills a prompt. It's not very long. It's 241 pages. So matchmaker, I already had a book picked out for matchmaker, but this is shorter. 74 in New York. Yeah, I don't know what it is here. It's probably about that. It's a little humid. It wasn't so bad, except that I was running around I wanted to have a slightly different position in the room. And then I had to stop and mess with the lighting. And it's not great, but I'm not too worried about it. And I can mess with it during the sprints or not. That got me a little warm. And let's see, because right now we are 76 with a real feel of 83. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that is warmer than I realized. I really bumped the air conditioner. Anyway, so this is great. It will fill my matchmaking prompt. That'll be awesome. Nice. Didn't realize that, but great. And I was there to pick up some other books for some other prompts. This is Slade House by David Mitchell. That is not David Mitchell, the British comedian. This is David Mitchell, I believe he's British novelist. He wrote Cloud Atlas. And this is a haunted house deal. And look, it's got this thing. This is actually a cutout. It's a hardback book with a cutout. Very nice. Down the road from a working class pub, along a narrow brick alley, you just might find the entrance to Slade House. A stranger will greet you by name and invite you inside. At first, you won't want to leave. Later, you'll find that you can't. Every 9 years, the residents of Slade House extend an invitation to someone who's different or lonely, a precocious teenager, a recently divorced policeman, a shy college student. But what really goes on inside? For those who find out, it's already too late. Spanning decades, leaping genres, and barreling toward an astonishing conclusion, Slade House is a haunted house story as only David Mitchell could imagine it. So that's for my haunted house prompt on the fall challenge. And let's see. I also got this. I have a subsequent book in the series on my shelf, but this is the first book of the series by Gina Showalter. Lords of the Underworld is the name of the series, and the book is The Darkest Night. It's large print, so that's why it looks like that. And I believe this is I think this is Demon. The man has a curse. And I know Hero with a Curse is one of the prompts, but I actually already read a cursed hero story. So anyway, I think though it might involve Lords of the Underworld. I think it might involve demons. We shall see. And then, yeah. Kristen's here and she says good morning because that's what her life is like because she lives on the West Coast. Guess what else I picked up at the library? It's not for the it's not for the fall challenge, but it is something that came up yesterday. Only Lovers in the Building. You and B were talking about it because you both got it in your Harlequin box. Oh, I'm holding them up on the wrong side, aren't I? Because from my perspective, it looks like this comment from Kristen is covering up the bottom part of this, but I think from your perspective, if I held it over here, that would be what was happening. I got to try to remember that because I keep not doing that. Oh, just jostled the tree. Like I said, I set up everything in a different position and now I don't know where anything is. So anyway, I have this because B said she'd listened to an advanced listener copy and she liked it. And Kristen has a copy now too, and it sounded intriguing, so I grabbed it. Slade House sounds like a good time, says Wyoming. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I really liked Cloud Atlas, and I think I've read other stuff by David Mitchell. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't, but I did like Cloud Atlas quite a bit. Let's see. Oh, I guess I haven't read anything else by David Mitchell. Oops, wrong side. So that's Haunted House, Matchmaker, and today's book is A Hint of Splendor by Kathy Clark. And I think that there is a possibility that I may have to rage DNF this book, but we shall see. Excuse me, just had lunch. It was the chance of a lifetime. Alyssa Stewart was one of the first private citizens chosen by NASA for space travel. But Alyssa hadn't reckoned on Greg Rogers. Lean and handsome, the commander wanted no part of civilians on board his flight, especially her. Alyssa soon learned his anger masked a far deeper emotion, an overwhelming attraction for her. Okay, so he's going to treat her like trash because he's secretly attracted to her. That's a form of sexual harassment and discrimination. But emotional ties between astronauts were forbidden by the high command. Alyssa and Greg broke all the rules, risking scandal and Alyssa's chance to realize her dream. She'd gambled everything to fly high in the sky. Would she give that up for the splendor of love? If she gives up her chance at spaceflight, something very few humans have ever been able to do, and only within the last 60, 70 years, just for the D, I'm going to be pretty ticked. This was published in 1986, specifically in April of 1986. And I think when Kathy Clark would have been writing this before it went through the editorial and publication process and everything, was probably after Krista McAuliffe, a school teacher from, I believe, New Hampshire, Vermont, somewhere in northern England, I think, was selected to be the first kind of private citizen, non-NASA member, non-military member to be in space. And it was probably written during that time after she was selected and before she unfortunately died in the Challenger disaster in January of 1986. This was published in April of 1986. And I wonder if they kind of were locked into publishing it and they couldn't not publish it or what, because I'm wondering if they had to think about it. Like, should we go ahead and publish this book about a woman who is a civilian going into space, even though we had this terrible disaster, which was not Krista McAuliffe's fault. I hope you don't, I'm not trying to imply that the Challenger disaster happened because they had a civilian woman on board. That's not what happened. But I'm just wondering if they were like, should we publish this? Maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, so that's today's book. And yeah. But first, 10 minutes of yuck, because I actually do have some kind of yucky chores that need to be done. Gwen says, it was reprinted as Starry Night. Oh, I didn't see that. Goodreads has an author's note. Ooh, I did not see that. Because, yeah, that would have been a really hard choice to make. Kathy Clark. Starry Nights by Kathy Clark. It was written prior to the Challenger tragedy. Yeah, that's what I guessed. Because I think she was maybe inspired by the selection of Krista McAuliffe because it was in all the papers and the description of her training and everything like that. But yeah, I would have imagined that it was not written. Yeah. She considered not releasing it because of the sensitive subject matter, but the story is very good and there are so many interesting facts about it. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you. Yeah, like my guess was that it was written between Krista McAuliffe's selection and her death, which apparently was the case, and they decided to just go ahead with it. Again, there's nothing about Krista McAuliffe's death or the Challenger disaster that had anything to do with the fact that there was a civilian on board. That was not the issue. Okay, so 10 minutes of yuck, because I actually do have some yuck to do. And it's coming up on 1/4 past the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and set it for, we will come back at 25 minutes past. and we can do our yuck, and then it's good times all the way. Oh yeah. And let me get the River 105.9 variety from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The River. Get that. Okay. Thanks again, Gwen, for finding that information for me. Okay. And I will see you in 10. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes. One thing I like about being set up in this corner with the curtains closed and a robe draped over the floor lamp, the acoustics are nice and flat. I don't know if you can tell any difference from where you're sitting, but I kind of like that. Might have something to do with all the, because I'm just like in this little confined corner, which usually doesn't have this much stuff in it, but it does now. Okay, so I did 10 minutes of yuck, and it was yuck. I actually only did 6 minutes of yuck, but it was yucky enough for 10, so I'm going to call it. And then I sat down and read for a little while. Um, I live in a two-story house, and the steps are wood. We have two sets of steps, one that's really too steep to use. Probably dates back to when the house was first built, almost 200 years ago. Uh, but the steps that we usually use, they're wood, and so they get very dusty. And as we go up and down the stairs several times during the day, that's two adults, my mom and me, uh, the dust kind of tends to get kicked to the side or tracked to other parts of the house. But there on the sides, it gets very dusty and a little cobwebby. So I cleaned that up and just one step at a time, started at the top and worked my way down backward, did not fall over. So I did that, and now I have probably displaced some spiders. Move this a little bit lower there. I probably displaced some spiders and got the dust off the steps. So that was good. Lisa says she's still untangling yarn. Ooh, that seems like something to do. Stormy's here. Stormy is here. She says, "Hi, Sock. I just got home. Dad had a doctor's appointment. Got your package." Oh, good. I was wondering because I saw that it was actually delivered yesterday, but going to open it on my daily reading vlog. Can I say it's from you? If not, that is fine. Just like to ask first. Appreciate your asking, and absolutely you can say it's from me. Yes, it's Sock Marionette. Bargain counter argument. Maybe I'll even pick up a couple of viewers. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, feel free to credit me as much or as little as you want. Appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy what's in there. And I will be sure to watch it back once you've posted it. Well, probably not until tomorrow morning because I've been going to bed really early lately. Thank you so much for asking. Appreciate it. And Stormy says, okay, cool. Awesome. And oh, by the way, speaking of Stormy, who is here now, she is going to be joining me tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern for Book Talk with Sock. This is a discussion, no sprints. And we're just going to be kind of, I used to do this. I kind of stopped because the summer was getting to me. And I was also getting stressed because I was doing different genres and it was a lot of prep work and I was kind of was getting burned out on that. So I'm coming back with a slightly different format, which is where I just talk to people about their book collections, anything that they really like to share about books, collecting, any particular items they want to share. I have some stuff, some recent acquisitions I want to talk about with Stormy because I think she'd be thinking that they're pretty cool. And yeah, so it's just, and people, of course, will be commenting, hopefully talking about some of their experience with book collecting, or maybe they don't collect books at all. Maybe it's all on the Kindle or it's all from the library. That's cool too. I used to be like that, but I just got into a very acquisitive mood in the last couple of years. So yes, I am looking for some things to show off. Awesome. So we could talk. Yeah. So I'm going to try to do that with different folks, and did that a little bit with Violet Cat 2 weeks ago. Well, 2 weeks ago tomorrow. We talked a little bit about that. That was kind of like a very soft reboot of Book Talk with Sock. This is like more like the complete thing. And I'm hoping to do it every other Thursday going forward. If I can find sufficient people, enough people who are interested in being on camera and talking. And if you are interested in being on camera and talking about books and book collecting and reading and so on, just DM me on Discord, leave a comment here, and we'll set something up. I would very much appreciate it because it doesn't really work without a guest. That will be fun, says Stormy. I'm sure hoping. I don't want you to have a bad time. I don't want to have a bad time. I've never had a bad time during Book Talk with Sock. It was just the prep work and the anticipatory anxiety was a little stressful. Once I got started, I always had a good time talking to folks. But yeah. Yes, that was my first time meeting Violet. I like that one. Yes, Violet's cool. Violet's very cool. And she actually joined me again this past Saturday I had some time left over on StreamYard because with a free account, I get 20 hours every month and they reset on the 14th of the month for me. And so that Saturday was the 13th. And so I just went ahead and used up all my hours at then some, because they don't cut you off in the middle of a stream. And Violet co-hosted with me, which was cool. So yes. So I did my 10 minutes of yuck in 6 minutes, and then I read the first few pages of this. And so far, it is very cute. She actually lives somewhere in Connecticut, not my part of Connecticut, because she has a 203 area code, which is like New Haven and Fairfield and more toward New York City from where I live. And most of the book is going to be taking place at Houston, the Johnson Space Center. So yes, here it is. And so it starts with her brushing her teeth one morning when somebody calls to let her know that she is the final candidate, that she is going to be the one going into space. And so we find out that she teaches gymnastics and aerobics. So she's like PE fitness type teacher. And I missed it. What are you reading? Asks Storm. It is called A Hint of Splendor by Kathy Clark. And Gwen actually sleuthed around and found out that it was also reprinted as Starry Nights. It was published in April of 1986, and it is about a woman who is a civilian going on a NASA flight. And apparently Kathy Clark wrote this after Krista McAuliffe, the school teacher from New Hampshire, was selected to be the first private citizen in space. So she wrote it after that selection, but before the Challenger disaster in which Krista McAuliffe was killed, so along with 6 other astronauts. And so this is about that. And she's going to meet this dude. His name is Brad. And he is an actual like NASA dude, and he is not super thrilled to have a civilian on board. And he's apparently particularly seems kind of angry with her. I haven't gotten that far yet. They haven't met yet because I've only read the first few pages. And apparently, though, it's because he's attracted to her. And so they're kind of attracted to each other, but because they're both in the space program, they're not supposed to, fraternize. And so she's like, oh dear, I really want to go into space, but I also got to get me some of that. So what do I do? I'm just saying that if she actually does drop out of getting her space flight in order to be with him, I am going to be very, very disappointed. That'll be a rage DNF for sure. Stormy says, okay. Is that a Candlelight book? Yes, this is Candlelight Ecstasy Romance, again from April of 1986. And they went ahead and published it. Apparently, Kathy Clark did some soul searching and decided to go ahead with the publication in April of 1986. Although, in the meantime, between the time she wrote it and the time it was actually published, Krista McAuliffe was actually killed. But she had done so much research and she liked the story so much that she decided to go ahead with it. And Gwen, like I said, Gwen found out that it was reprinted as Starry Nights. But this is the Candlelight Ecstasy Romance. Oh, I keep holding it on the wrong side. Yeah. And Stormy says, I thought so, as it has the gold looking cover. Yeah, for a while it was like gold and white, and they had like an oval with a white background. And then they kind of moved to this bigger image that's more of a rectangle. And yeah, during the sprint, I will find a different Candlelight Ecstasy Romance. I don't see any immediately available, but I'll grab one so that we can compare the different kinds of covers that they had between like when they first started in 1986. Okay, so and yeah. So do we want to have a 30-minute sprint, or does anybody have anything they want to ask or share? Anyway, yeah, as far as they called her at like while she was brushing her teeth and told her. And so I'm just a few pages in, and she has flown to Houston, and she's just arrived at NASA in Houston to begin orientation and stuff. So we haven't even met the dude. Gwen says, oh, excuse me, Stormy says sprinting is good. Sprint sounds good, says Lisa. Okay, let's do that. We'll do a half an hour. Do we want a half an hour or 45 minutes? Why don't we do 45 minutes, I think? That'll get us to 20 past the hour. Yeah, we're going to do that. I'm game for a sprint, says Kristen. I have to work on my cowboy romance. Woo, cowboys. Yeehaw! What was it? Reverse cowgirl under the pines, above the pines, in the pines, under the pines, beyond the pines. No, that was a movie. Okay. 45 is good, says Stormy. Nice. Thank you for the validation. And let's see. Sprinting until, whoops, that's not how you spell until, 00:25. Okay, I'll see you guys in 45. There we go. Okay, it's been 45 minutes by my reckoning. As you can see, I decided to get into my nightie, and I changed my tiara to go with the nightie. And so far, I'm really enjoying this. It's a lot of fun. I have tabs to discuss, but first, Kristen said, the FMC makes me so frustrated. What were you reading again? You told us, and now I can't remember. Let me scroll back. I thought you told us. Maybe not. Oh, here. Oh, it's your cowboy romance. That's right. Beneath the Pines. Okay. Stormy, are you still here? Because I got my other. It's the cowboy romance. Yeah. Yeah, I scrolled back and found it. Stormy, are you still here? Because I got some of my older Candlelight Ecstasy romances so we can see how the covers go. Let me know. And anyway, this book is actually it's really fun so far. I'm really having a good time. I didn't get a whole lot read because Stormy says she read some on an ebook called A Very Bookish Murder. Ooh. I am here, yes. Okay, so this is the one from 1986, and this is number 26. Is this the oldest one I have? Yeah, this is number 26, which is, it's not the oldest one I have, but it's the only oldest one I could find. 1981. October 1981 is when it was published. It is number 26, Bargain with the Devil by Jane Castle. Oops, wrong side. But yeah, like I was saying, they different approaches to the gold. I don't know if you can tell in this light, but this border around the outside is gold. And we have green sprayed edges. Jane Castle, of course, is Jane Ann Krentz, as I recall. Yep, Jane Krentz. Sprayed edges. And then moving forward just a couple of months to number 32, which is from December of 1981. So literally just a couple months later, we have Sensuous Burgundy by Bonnie Drake. And we still, the cover design is still the same, but we don't have a sprayed edge anymore. And I believe Bonnie Drake is also Barbara Delinsky. Yeah. Bonnie Drake is AKA Barbara Delinsky. So that's the evolution of the book design. They keep moving this, so I don't have to be quite so. Yes. Okay, let's move myself a little bit further away from the tree so I'm not knocking it constantly. Okay, so what's going on? I didn't get a whole lot read. I mean, it's a 45-minute sprint, and I did make some progress, quite a bit of progress, but Stormy says, I opened my package and it was so cool. Thanks for all the fun books. I don't remember which one of those you didn't like, LOL. Well, I was like, oh yes, I will find some older Candlelight Ecstasy romances and I can show you what the covers used to look like. And I'm like, or you could just open your package because there are some in there. The one I didn't like was from last week. It was Midnight Secret or Secrets. I can't remember who wrote it. And then the other books, let's see, I read Storm a couple of weeks ago on the channel, and I thought I'd send it along because, you know, it literally had your name on it or part of your name. And also there are two Candlelight Ecstasy romances. One is by Alice Morgan and one is by, I don't remember. And the Penny Jordan Harlequin Presents. Those are three books that I actually read for the retro romance back in February. And there's a vlog that I did of me reading them. So, yeah. So if you want to check that out, you can, or if you want to read them or whatever. I think I did. It was fairly early. It was a fairly early reading vlog. So I did some weird things around spoilers. So I think it's pretty easy to avoid spoilers if you just want to see me talking about them. So yeah, and I don't remember what else was in the package. I'll have to watch your video this evening. Okay, so far I am really enjoying this. Oh, Stormy says, oh, I think I kind of remember you doing those. Yeah, well, I mean, it was back in February. It was retro romance, so it's been several months, Anyway, so this book, like I said, I'm having a good time. I didn't get a whole lot read during the 45 minutes. I am on page 60, which for me, for one of these books, 45 minutes, that's not very far, especially since I'd already read a few pages. But I was having trouble getting settled in. I wanted to change my outfit. And then there was a voicemail, and it was the second voicemail. Like the last one was from the 4th of September from the same number. And it's a dermatological practice in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And they've left a couple of messages for me because apparently they have the wrong phone number for somebody who's been referred to their office by a general practitioner. And so they're trying to get a hold of this person to make an appointment. And I'm like, well, it can be very hard to get a dermatological appointment, at least in this area. So I was like, well, somebody's probably waiting to get a call and they're not getting it. So I had to call them and try to figure out who to speak to. Like they had this complicated voicemail system. And I was like, I don't know who to talk to. So finally, I just talked to their billing department. I was just like, if you could just pass this along to the scheduling department, because somebody's waiting for an appointment and they're not going to get it from calling me. So anyway, so it's like I said, some poor schlub in Tennessee is trying to get an appointment and it's not working. So that took some time, and then I was trying to get settled in and get these books to show. So however, I do have tabs, so many tabs. Okay. So let's see what we have. Okay, the first time she sees him, he is practicing part of their zero G, their zero gravity practicing is in a indoor swimming pool. Whoops, somebody can have a comment. Stormy says, nice of you to call them and try and let them know. Yeah, like I said, I think it's I got a call from that a different medical practice in Chattanooga about the same person with the same first name, because they don't give the last name, they just give the first name, which I think is nice and discreet of them because they did get a wrong number. So from the billing department at a different office, medical office, and so so somewhere along the line, somebody got the wrong number or the wrong area code, more likely, and it's just has carried over from the one practice to the other. So hopefully they can get a hold of somebody. Which Jane book are you sharing? Okay, the Jane book, I'm not sharing it. I don't have plans to read this anytime soon, unless people are clamoring for it. It is, I was sharing it specifically because of the cover design. I wanted to show an older comparative Candlelight Ecstasy Romance cover design. It's gold around the edges. Like I said, I'm not sure if you can tell in this light. It's not as aggressively gold as this, and then you have a smaller picture. It's by Jane Castle. It's from 1981, and it's called Bargain with the Devil. Every line of his face, from the deep-set eyes to the arrogant nose, he's constantly thumbing it at people, to the arrogant nose and harshly, let me get my other reading glasses. There we go. And harshly carved cheekbones declared that this was a man who lived by his own rules. He hadn't come to Tucson for his health. Hunter Manning wanted revenge. Stacy Ryland looked into the eyes of the man who meant to ruin her father. She had made a bargain, agreed to marry him if he would stop his threats, with a coolly possessive air that defied protest. His hand settled on her small waist and moved slowly upward. How could she go through with it? She despised him. His touch made her tremble with outrage and desire. Oh, yeah. So that's a Bargain with the Devil by Jane Krantz, October 1981. Okay, I have that one in my collection. Ooh, fun. Nice. Okay, so anyway, is doing a little fiddling with stuff. Okay, so I got to page 60. Again, that's not as far as I would usually get in that amount of time, but I was having trouble settling in and I had to make phone calls and whatnot. Okay, so the first time she sees him, he's all bundled up and practicing in the swimming pool that they use to try to help them orient, to get used to lower gravity. And she was aware that the magnification qualities of thick glass and water explained the incredible breadth of the swimmer's shoulders and the generous bulge of muscles in his biceps and thighs. But the fact that she could still get an accurate perception of his narrow hips and long legs at the same time must be some sort of optical illusion. Okay, you know it's not. You know he's just that good looking. He's got that much of a stellar physique. Okay. And then we find out something, and remember from the back of the book, he does not like the fact that there is a civilian on this mission. Well, we find out that he has been in the program in NASA for like 12 years. He was served as an Air Force pilot in Vietnam, and then he went to NASA. So he's been in the program for like 12 years or more. No, I think later they do specify 12 years. He's been in NASA for 12 years, and for one reason or another, he's never actually been in space. He's like been training for 12 years. He's got all of this information, all of this knowledge, all of this ability, and he's never actually made it into space. And so this is basically his last chance before he ages out of being able to be an astronaut. You know, he could still be in NASA, but he can't be an astronaut. And this is his last chance. And he doesn't want anything to go wrong or screw up the mission in any way because he'll lose a shot. So it's like there is this that's kind of some of the pressure that he's dealing with and why he does not want to have to deal with civilians and any complications they might bring. Gwen Point says, just wait until they get in the vomit comet. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's coming. So we get some background as to that and why he, like I said, he doesn't want anything to mess with his chances of getting into space. Last chance. And we actually we do get some from his point of view eventually. We also briefly get something from one of the other astronauts, the mission engineer, who is also a woman. And she just sees him being hostile to Alyssa. And she's like, this is not the way he normally is. So, okay, so she's admired his form in the water. Okay. So, the engineer says, we're all very dedicated, serious people, but with Greg, it's even more than that. His name is Greg, not Brad. I don't know why I thought it was Brad. It's his whole life. He's been in the astronaut. Okay. So yeah, so the stakes are pretty high for him, and he does not want anything messing with this. And so when he meets her, he says, surely you're not the athlete that they picked for this mission. She is, and stop calling her Shirley. Her name is Alyssa. Surely you're not the athlete that they picked for this mission. When I think of an athlete, somehow I get a mental picture of someone much larger and more muscular. She's like 5'2" and small boned with it because like we're told that she wears like a size 5 shoe. So she's very petite. And then he added with a derisive snort, so we're not only to be blessed with a civilian, but a petite one at that. And then she comes back at him. And she points out that she's actually she's an Olympic medalist. I think they said she's a medalist. I know she was an Olympic gymnast. She might even be a medalist. Oh, she's a retired Olympic gymnast. It doesn't specify whether or not she medaled, but just getting into Olympic level gymnastics is already a huge achievement. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, when you're at that top, whether or not you actually were in the top 3 of the top 10 of the top, you know, etc. So it's not like even if she didn't get a medal, it's not like she's a schlump. And so she says, I own a studio in Bridgeport, where I pass my knowledge on to young, talented Olympic hopefuls. And then he says, yeah, I think this whole civilian program is a complete waste of time, but it should be interesting to find out exactly what you will be able to add to this mission. Yes, it should be, she replied. I'm not sure what I'll be expected to do, but I may be able to pass along a few lessons in good manners in my spare time. So then she thinks, oh no, I just mouthed off to the mission commander. And everybody else in the room is looking at her like, oh no, she didn't. She did. And his response is that he laughs and he thinks it's funny. And he says, I guess maybe I underestimated you. It's not you personally I object to, but the questionable wisdom of NASA in taking up valuable crew space with people who have absolutely nothing to do with the space program. And then as the story progresses, she gets kind of like, has a lot of empathy for his position because she's like, how would she feel if somebody suddenly showed up to her gymnastics studio and just with no previous training was doing stuff on the balance beam, because she's only going to get like 3.5 weeks of training. The other person who was selected, the alternate, is a professional baseball player, and he's kind of got a bad attitude toward her, but he doesn't have any actual lines of dialogue, so he's just sort of glowering in the background. And let me see. So so it's like he realizes he's being kind of stupid. We do get, not only we get his point of view in a minute or two, but let me see what we have. Oh yes, she thinks about his attitude. She's just like looking. They're at a party. She's at a party and she's looking for him in particular. And she says she's not sure why she should be interested in him. After all, she had received better receptions from Russian judges at gymnastic meets than she had from him at their first meeting, which I thought was kind of a fun way to phrase it. In the Cold War, the Russian judges were seen to be fairly harsh. Okay, and over here, oh, we have a description of what they're at a barbecue, and he's wearing like a teal knit sport shirt. Yeah, here it is. A teal blue knit sport shirt molded itself to his impressively developed muscles. He's also wearing white slacks. So we are in peak Miami Vice fashion. Because later on, he's communicating with a space mission that's already in progress because he has expertise at what they're trying to do. They're trying to retrieve a broken satellite to bring it back to Earth to be repaired and relaunched. And he has particular expertise in the equipment that they'll be using. So he's there as kind of like their to help guide them through the process. And she goes, so she's seeing all of him and all of the other ground control people, mission control people, and they're all wearing like these pastel shirts. And it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, Miami Vice. Oh, and here we get his point of view. He was aware that of the hostility he projected every time they met, and he felt strangely unable to control it. And he's just like, he keeps feeling like super awkward around her because he thinks she's pretty. But he's kind of a hard ass to everyone. So and so that he's not really singling her out, although he's just awkward with her in social interactions because he's just like, oh, she's pretty. Oh no, what do I do? She's pretty. And let's see. Okay. And let me see. Oh, and then there's a sad bit where it's talking about how the first civilian flight with the teacher as a crew member had gone well enough. And, you know, again, this was written before the Challenger disaster. So that was just kind of a sad thing. Oh, and then they're playing, at one point, they're at one of these barbecues and they're playing, the astronauts are playing volleyball. And she's on this team with these two astronauts, Sam and Greg, and they're just like being really hyper competitive, but they're ball hogs. They're just like won't let anybody else near the ball. And so she's just like, finally she starts seizing the moment because they're playing this way, and they lose the first game by 5 points. And so he finally just starts grabbing the ball away from them. And she says to him, he's getting after her because she kind of elbowed him out of the way to get to the ball. And he says, ow, what was that for? Oh, did I hit you? Alyssa asked innocently. I was just trying to take my turn and get the ball over the net. That is the object of the game, isn't it? Or are the rules different down here in Texas? And he says, I was only trying to help you a little. And she says, you were not. You were hogging the ball. I happen to be a very good volleyball player, and some of these other people might be too. But who would ever know? No one else ever gets a chance to play. So he and Sam sort of back off. And then what do you know? Once everybody gets their turn at the ball, they start winning their games. Next, it will be a linen or a starter jacket. Oh, members only jacket. OP, Ocean Pacific, also stood for overpriced. Yeah, we're gonna have little Ocean Pacific shirts and members only jackets. Yeah, starter jacket, linen. Okay, so like I said, once he and Sam stop hogging the ball, they start winning their games. And they're like, how did that happen? Okay, that's the bit where they're in mission control and all the dudes are wearing pastel colored shirts, their ties loosened. Oh, and then the NASA organizers, the ones who aren't going into space, they decide that they want to. This is a 14-day mission in space, and back then they were usually mostly 7-day. And so they decide what they want to do is start doing like an exercise program before everybody leaves, and then see how that affects their heart health when they come back to Earth. And they put her in charge of it kind of at the last minute. And she's like, oh, great. Everybody's mad at me because there's one more element to the training that I'm the face of it and I got to do this. And she's like, whatever. So, of course, everybody, Greg especially is like, oh, Jane Fonda here is going to like have us do aerobics before we go into space. Is this some kind of joke? And they're like, no, no, you don't have to do it. And he's like, he thinks to himself, well, when they say you don't actually have to do something, but they imply that your cooperation would be valuable, you kind of have to. So he does this. So they do this, and she spends an hour, like, she devises a special workout for them. And they spend like an hour doing it. And by the end of it, like everybody's moaning and groaning. It's just like was way more strenuous than they expected it to be. And oh yeah, wait, oh, I lost my spot. Oh yeah, he's thinking Greg. Everybody else is just like flopped out. They did a 10-minute cool down, and they're still like exhausted and flopped out and all sweaty. And it says he's looking at her and thinking, yeah, she has a few telltale perspiration marks, but he suspected it was a token sweat just to keep everyone else from feeling too depressed. I like that. Stormy says, this one sure sounds kind of fun. It is. It is. I like the idea where he's like, oh my gosh, this was so much more of a workout than I expected. And she's sweating, sure, but it's just because she's trying to make us feel okay about the fact that we're all struggling here. So, yeah. And yeah. So I'm actually really enjoying this. And I kind of when I read an author I haven't read before, especially when it's from the 1980s and there's this like battle of the sexes element to it, I'm like, ooh, is this going to be another rage quit like it was last week? And it's like, I now kind of trust Kathy Clark to bring it on home in a way that won't be just really, really annoying. So yeah, that's a pleasant surprise. Very excited about that. Ready to hit another 45-minute sprint to um, read some more. Unless I get a call from a specialist in, I don't know, Billings, Montana, who wants to make an appointment for somebody in that area. I have the wrong area code. Okay, so are we ready for another 45-minute sprint? Or wait, if we do a 50-minute sprint, that'll take us to half past the hour. How does that sound to people? I like that. We're going to do that. I have spoken. Okay, so 50-minute sprint. So sprinting. Whoa, pretty sure that's. Sure, says Stormy. Thanks for the validation. Sprinting until 0030. Perfect time, says Lisa. I have a meeting I have to get to. Okay, well, I'll see you back at half past the hour. Okay, it is 30 minutes past the hour. It's been 40 minutes. I don't know why I said 50 minutes earlier. That was only 40 minutes. I forgot how time works. And my struggles with the lighting continue because I came back and I thought, mm, I guess that's okay. I'm not crazy about it. I don't know what happened in the meantime. Anyway, so they did indeed go on. Oops, sorry, one sec. They did indeed go on the Vomit Comet, and she did fine on the Vomit Comet. She didn't have a problem at all because she thinks that she did better than like one of the other astronauts, not Greg, but one of the other astronauts, and also the alternate, the baseball player. They did not do well on the Vomit Comet. They got kind of seasick, but she did okay, and she thinks it's probably because she does gymnastics, so she's used to like spinning and leaping and jumping and spinning around in the air and so on. So she thinks that that's probably why she did okay with that. So they got together not too long after into the sprint. They did get together like in a sexy way. He takes her out on his sailboat. They get together and then they're sneaking around for a bit as they finish up the training and head to Florida. And they're not as good at sneaking around as they think they are. And a reporter sees them and puts the story out. And they have to put up with all of these. There are all these jokes on late night, and there are politicians looking to score points and so on. And they tell them for the time being that she can continue to train and that they're going to assume that the schedule is going forward unless the political heat gets to be a little too much. And in her mind, she's already decided that she will, in fact, give up her space flight to be with Greg. I mean, she might not have a choice. And I'm not as annoyed by this decision as I thought I was, because I mean, she is willing to yield to Greg, not just because she loves him and he loves her. He's made it clear that he whatever happens, he wants to be with her forever. Like he wants to have children with her and everything. So she is kind of willing to give it up for Greg because he has been training for it for 13 years and it's kind of like his dream. And we find out why he wasn't able to go on previous missions. He was originally scheduled to go on a mission that had something to do with Skylab. And then there were those solar flares that made Skylab fall to Earth. I actually remember when that was in the news. I remember being incredibly anxious that some piece of Skylab was going to land on me personally. I don't know. My parents and my older sister were all like, Sock, you do realize that the Earth is 70% water. The chances that it's going to land on land at all are very slim. I think some pieces of it did land in the Australian outback, as I recall, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so but I remember being very worried about that. So anyway, his mission got scrubbed because Skylab fell to Earth. And then he was supposed to go on another mission a few years later, and he broke his foot playing softball. He broke his ankle playing softball like 6 weeks before the mission. So, they're like, you can't have a cast in zero gravity. It's not good for you. It's not good for the mission. It's not good. So anyway, so I'm not mad at this decision that she's made. Like I said, where I am, I've only got 30 pages left. So, one more short sprint and I'll be done. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at Kathy Clark or the story or Alyssa for choosing. Like I said, she might not have a choice, and so it's basically they're not saying, give up Greg or don't go on the mission. They're saying that ship has already sailed. They can either finesse it so she can still go on the mission or not. Basically, although I mean, she said if it were a choice, she would yield to Greg. Again, he's been training for this for over a dozen years now, almost 13 years. So, and this is probably his last chance to go on a mission in space. So, and I think the way that the relationship is developing between the two of them it's very sweet and charming. Last week, I was thinking about Midnight Secret or Secrets. I don't know. I don't have it anymore because Stormy has it now. And how he like comes into her house and bodily lifts her off of her exercise bicycle because I think I can't remember who wrote that now. I think maybe they were going for some sort of like late 30s, early 40s screwball comedy kind of thing, but it just plays a lot differently when he's breaking into her house where she lives alone, and it just hit a lot differently. This one, I could see this being a Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy movie, and it's a lot of fun. And I think Kathy Clark has done a very good job of providing us with access to his inner dialogue, his inner monologue, his thoughts as well as hers. And like I said, the decisions are not being nothing. I mean, he's a little kind of mean to her at first, but in a way that kind of like makes sense. And when she stands up to him, he's like he thinks it's funny. He doesn't think it's funny because he's being condescending to her. He thinks it's funny the way she put him down. And he's like, oh, okay, well, this is yeah, I do respect her. I underestimated her. And then as the training progresses and he sees how knowledgeable she is, I mean, she actually does have a pilot's license that she's been flying for like 10 years. And so he's like, oh, okay, she is adaptable, she's intelligent, she can learn stuff, and she's working very hard. So I think I really like the dynamic between the two of them, and that they each start to appreciate one another fairly quickly, and it helps having access to his thoughts. Let's comment here. Stormy says, Midnight Secrets by Kit Daly. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think maybe what was happening in that book, like I said, was that they were going for this kind of screwball battle between the sexes, late 30s, early 40s. Unfortunately, in the 80s, that hits quite differently. And again, she is an independent woman who has like a couple of different jobs, and she has her own house and everything. And I mean, some of those things were questionable in the 30s and the 40s. It's just that it just doesn't land the same way. I mean, yeah. So, but this one, I think, like I said, I think Kathy Clark does a good job of establishing mutual respect, and that Alyssa's making the decision she is, in as much as she gets a chance to make a decision, is being presented in a way that, oh yes, this makes sense. It makes sense that he would resent her and come to admire her, and it makes sense that she would be like, well, I do admire him, but why is he being like this, to being like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. And to choosing his ambitions over hers because they're disproportionate. He has more experience, he has been at this a lot longer, so it's not like they're on a level playing field and she gives up on her dream just because he's a dude. There's a lot more going on and a lot more that makes sense. So glad you're still here. Had to run errands, says Roxy Ann. I am still here. Thank you. I don't know why Stormy says, I'm glad you're liking that one. It does sound like a fun one. It really is. It really is. And I have 30 pages left. So another 15-20 minute sprint, and I'll definitely have it done. So I can kind of update you as to what happens. Because I don't know. I mean, I know that they've kind of basically said that they're committed to each other. They want to get married. They want to have kids and stuff like that. However, how do they get to that point? Does she end up having to stay on Earth, or do they both get to go up into space despite the political and media pressure and social pressure and stuff? I'm glad you're liking that book. I'm enjoying your thoughts on it. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I mean, it's probably kind of fun to see me rage quit a book, but it's more fun for me when I'm enjoying myself. Anyway, so like I said, I can probably get this knocked out in 15-20 minutes. So does anybody have anything they want to share on progress they're making? I don't know if Kristen's still around, if the FMC is still frustrating her, or what. But yeah, so we can just one more quick sprint and I can tell you what happened. And you know that you can step out if you don't want spoilers. Oh, and if you are going to step out because you don't want spoilers, too late, for this book that came out in 1986. Okay, this is going to be next week's book. And this is a tea and biscuits kind of book because it is a Regency romance called Wife Errant by Joan Smith. And this is from Fawcett. And this is a very short book, so I should be, yeah, this is also 188 page book. And so I'll be able to do this in an afternoon. It's got reasonably easy to read font. And it also has some notes in the back. So that's something to look for. Yay, I can get some reading done. Well, it's probably not going to be a very long sprint because I'm almost done and I don't want to use up too many of my free hours from StreamYard. Anyway, so this will be next week, and this will be a book for the fall challenge because one of the prompts is to read a Regency, and I think that'll be fun to do that live and in person. So that'll be next week. Wife Errant by Joan Smith. And it is from 1992. It's first printed in October of 1992. So that's that. So I thought I'd share that in case people want to duck out because they do not want spoilers for the last 30 pages of A Hint of Splendor by Kathy Clark. Okay. And also, if you are planning to duck out because you don't want spoilers or because you've got other things to do, whatever, I will remind you that tomorrow night at 7 at this very same channel, Bargain Counter Argument, 7 Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern, Stormy will be joining me, and we're just going to have a nice chat about books and recent acquisitions and treasures and collecting books and stuff like that. So that should be a good time, and I hope you are able to join. So unless anybody has anything else to say, why don't we go ahead and sprint to the top of the hour? Sprinting until 0000. And that should give me enough time to finish this because, yeah, that's a little over 15 minutes, not quite 20. 17 minutes and 30 seconds. And I will see you then. Okay, so it is now the top of the hour. We've been at this for 3 hours. And I finished the book. Oh, yeah. There was a plot twist. Hmm. Hmm. I'll never know what it is because I can't find my glasses. Okay, there was a plot twist because what happened was they are, there's all this pressure building up, social and political and so on. And finally, NASA makes a decision just 3 days before the flight. They make a decision. One of the things they talk about, uh, the moral majority was picketing in front of the White House and NASA's front gates carrying signs that said space is not the place and keep heaven clean, because everybody thinks they're going to get into orbit in this like tiny tin can of a shuttle with 5 other people and just like spend all of their time boning, I guess. I don't know. Plot twist, exactly. So what NASA decides, they call them into a meeting together with the bigwig from NASA, and they say, grimly he faced them, obviously wishing he didn't have to do this dirty job. I'm really sorry to have to be the person to tell you this, but Greg, it looks like you've been scratched from this mission. So NASA decided to scratch Greg and not Alyssa. I know. And meanwhile, we actually find out some stuff about Alyssa and her Olympic situation, her Olympics as an Olympic gymnast. Um, the first Olympics she went to, she was 14, and so she didn't do super great because she was only 14. So that was in 1972. And then in 1976, Nadia Comaneci dominated everything. And she didn't medal in 1976. And she's like, okay, by then she was 18. She's like, okay, I'll train really hard for another 4 years and I'll come back. And 1980, when I'm 22, is gonna be my year. For those of you who don't remember, 1980 was the year that the United States decided to boycott the Olympics because they were being held in Moscow, and Moscow had invaded Afghanistan. And the United States decided that we were just not going to go, that we could not go to this rogue nation as we saw it. So she's like, and after that, she, by 1984, she would have been like 26 and she would have been kind of too old. So she understands where he's coming from, like getting his mission scratched. And so when they were both thinking that she was going to lose her chance, he was like comforting her and stuff. But when they find out that he's the one who's been scratched, and it's for a couple of different reasons, and one of those reasons is that public opinion, they've been getting a lot of letters from people, and 80% of those letters have kind of cast Greg as the villain in the situation. Like, he seduced this poor innocent woman, and oh no, isn't this terrible? And it's not like that at all. And neither one of them never occurred to anybody that anybody would read the situation that way. So, is there a large age gap between the two? Well, I'm not sure, because it's supposed to be 1986, but she's described, and if she was 14 for the 1972 Olympics, that means she was born in 1956, but she's also described as being 28. He's 36, so I'm not sure exactly. The math doesn't quite math, so I'm just mentally saying, oh, she was probably more like 30. I don't know why they have her as 28, because that doesn't work. And he's 36, so he's like 8 years going just by there's this gap of 8 years. It's not a huge gap, but it's still like everybody's like, oh, he seduced her. And also we're talking about how yeah, so there is a bit of a gap, but I mean, the difference between 28 and 36 is not the same as the difference between, say, 18 and 26. So, but the public has decided that she is this sweet, innocent person, and he has taken foul advantage of her. So they're like, at one point, she's like, what if we get married before we go up into space? Like, we have 3 days, we could get married and then we'll be married. And the NASA guy is like, yeah. Greg himself is like, no, because people will just then start to say that we're going to consummate our marriage in space. Because I mean, basically everybody's got a really dirty mind. So I like keep heaven clean. So, but when they find out that he's the one who's gotten scrubbed and not her, he just like walks out and leaves. And she's like trying to get him to like say he'll come and spend the night with her so she can like talk to him and be nice and not be nice, like comfort him, not in a boingy boingy kind of way, but just like, he comforted her when she thought she was going to get scrubbed. And he's like, no. And he goes back to Houston. And she's like, okay. She keeps trying to call him and he won't answer the phone, can't get a hold of him. And she's like, okay. And then just as they are having some last minute, like, I don't think it's the night before they leave, but 2 nights before they leave, he shows up again. I mean, it's only been about 24, 36 hours. And he shows up and he apologizes and says, I admit I was very surprised and upset when I was taken off the mission. So I had to get away to work it out of my system. So he went flying because he also has his own, he's like a pilot aside from being in the Air Force. He has a small light aircraft, I guess, that he flies. I was able to think more clearly and put things back into perspective. I discovered some ugly truths about myself that I'd hoped I'd exercised. I'm ashamed that I acted like such a creep at that meeting. I could afford to act magnanimously and show admirable understanding for you when you thought you might be replaced. But when the shoe was on the other foot, I fell apart. And then he's like, it's not the end of the world for me. Yeah, he's like 36 and he's not too far off from an age at which he could retire from the Air Force, although not necessarily mandatory retirement. But he's saying, that we're running missions every 6 months now. So I could actually get up by the end of the year. I could be in the next mission or the mission after that after you. So I still have more chances. You don't have any more chances. It's either this or nothing for you. So he's like more sanguine about it. And I like this. He's also talking about his emotions. He says, I didn't realize it, but my emotions have been dead since the Vietnam War. I had closed them off, become a military machine, and hadn't felt anything in a long time until you came along, bringing me back to life. You weren't afraid to stand up to me and even dared to challenge me when it didn't appear you had a chance at success. But you won more than the challenge. You won my heart. So I like that even though we have had some access to his emotions during that day or so that he spent soul searching before he came back to Florida, because they're leaving from Cocoa Beach, from Cape Canaveral Kennedy Space Center. He did some soul searching and realized that like he was being kind of a bit of a jerk, but I mean, he was really upset and she understands that. And then when she does get to go on the mission, they have a last minute substitution for the mission commander. And then as they're lifting off, during liftoff, she can see that a T-38, which is a Talon 38, which is a supersonic Air Force craft, is what he flies for the Air Force when he's, that's what he's rated for. He actually gets permission from the Air Force to kind of accompany them during liftoff. And so he flies alongside and kind of gives them a little wing wiggle so that she knows that he's going to be waiting for her to come back, and then they can get married and then he can go on his mission and it'll be lovely. So that was the plot twist. I really had a good time with this and it did not disappoint me. It did not happen the way I thought it would. And I liked that they were able to communicate. There were some barriers to communication. And sometimes like there's one point where he's thinking to himself that he has a hard time in the middle of the book. He has a hard time like admitting he was wrong. And he thinks about that. He's like, yes, he just kind of made such a big deal out of her being on this mission when he didn't want her to be, that it was kind of hard for him to like make it up to her without feeling like he was losing face. And it's like, yes, these are flawed human beings with flawed reactions. And I like the delay. Like they'll have an argument, or like he walked out of that meeting having had his hopes dashed, and he takes the time and processes. And she has the patience to let him do that. And she's like, okay, I hope I hear from him again. Uh, so, so I like that. So yes, they do have these like reactions to one another, and they have arguments and stuff, but they both have the grace and the experience and the emotional maturity to be like, okay, yeah, walking away wasn't his best decision under the circumstances, but he was also under a lot of stress and had been. So Gwen says, ah, how maverick. Yes. That ending sounded nice. It is. It was. Uh, and they lived happily ever after, says Roxy Ann. And we get a thumbs up and a sunflower from Wyoming. And actually, here's the final paragraph of the story. A small, wistful smile touched Alyssa's lips. I'm picturing her at 3Gs going up. She's like, I don't know how much she would have been able to move her face at all. Maybe, yeah. So a small, wistful smile touched Alyssa's lips. She knew that had been Greg's uniquely personal way of wishing her a bon voyage and reassuring her that he loved her and would be waiting eagerly for her return. There was no doubt in her mind that theirs would be a marriage made in heaven. So, that's so cute. I really had a good time with that. And it was just, I think there was a level of emotional maturity. It's like, yes, they were, like I said, they were doing goofy things and having goofy reactions, but then they were like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Why am I like this? I gotta, excuse me, sneezy. So, yes, so I ended up really, really liking this one a lot. So, yeah, really good. Not at all what I was worried it would be. This is what I was hoping Midnight Secret would be, and it wasn't. This is nice. I really, Lisa says, I really like books that deal with emotions in a mature way. Well, yeah, because like I said, I mean, the fact that they're upset and he walks out of the meeting and so on, that all makes emotional sense to me. And the way that they're able to pull out from that and communicate eventually, it all, I just felt very satisfied with that. I was like, okay, yes, it would make sense that he would just not know what to do with this, that he could be supportive when he thought she was going to be the one who was scrubbed, and how he would, like, when it comes out of the blue, because neither of them were expecting that it would turn out he would be the one who was scrubbed, that he would have trouble dealing with that. And I think so the fact that he went out and decided to go flying around in the wild blue yonder to made a lot of sense. Oh, speaking of, there's this point in here where she delivers, this is after they're already in Florida, and she delivers the ultimate provocation. She shows up with an army t-shirt, because she wasn't in the army, but her father was, so she grew up around military. And of course he's Air Force, so she walks in wearing an army t-shirt, he's wearing an Air Force t-shirt, and everybody's like, oh no, oh no. And so she looks at him and she starts singing the army song, and he starts singing the Air Force song. And then another astronaut who's in the Marines starts singing the Marine Corps hymn. And then yet another astronaut who's in the Navy starts singing Anchors Aweigh. And then these two, Henry, the baseball player backup guy, and the other guy, and another astronaut who hasn't served in the military, look at each other. There's all these people singing 4 different military songs, and they start singing Staying Alive. So it's just like everybody's having a good old time. That was kind of fun. LOL, that is funny, says Lisa. Yeah, it was. They're looking at each other like, what do we do? Okay, Staying Alive it is. Oh, and there's this other thing I was going to talk about during the last break and then didn't. A little bit of 80s stuff. He decides to he wants to spend time with her, but he knows that he can't spend time alone with her. This is like very early on before they start sneaking around, and not very effectively. And he decides to have a movie night over at his place. And so everybody comes over for movie night, and he's like, okay, so do we want to watch I think he offered like Star Wars 2010 and another space movie. I can't remember which one. And they're like, "Oh, come on, don't you have anything that's not a space movie? Like maybe we could watch Rocky or Rambo." They end up watching Jewel of the Nile, which would have been fairly newly on video at this time. And I'm like, yeah, of all of those options, that's probably the one I would be least interested in watching. I mean, I think I've seen all of those. What was the other space movie? I had it marked and then I forgot to talk about it and I removed the markers. Uh-huh. This is fascinating, scintillating viewing. I think the movies were. Oh, here's what he's got. He's got The Right Stuff, 2010 or Return of the Jedi. And then they're like, oh, come on, what about, yeah, Rocky or Rambo? And then they end up watching Jewel of the Nile. So that was very 80s. With his projection screen TV. Oh, I didn't even think about. I know they're watching tapes because, I don't know what they were watching then. It looks like, yes, that's what they're doing. Those were not good. Yeah, those were not good. I remember seeing them at the time and being less than impressed. Not good. Now you can have like a tiny little projector that costs like 25 bucks and it looks so much better. Of course, so does the source material. So, yes, they're watching tapes. Yeah, you called it. Totally called it. So, yeah, that was Hint of Splendor by Kathy Clark. And next week will be Wife Errant by Joan Smith. Regency. Uh, Short Regency. And that will fill in my Regency bingo because, yeah, for the fall challenge. So thank you all for joining me alive or watching it back later. I appreciate it. And again, tomorrow is tomorrow at 7 p.m. here, Bargain Counter Argument, and Stormy is going to be joining me to have a nice conversation about books. No, they weren't. The color bled. Yes. And they were just kind of like fuzzy and just the quality was not there. So, yeah, anything you gain from seeing it big kind of revealed that it was not a great format to try to watch very big. Hopefully, catch. Why do I think I can do this without my glasses? So hopefully, catch you in Storm tomorrow. Hopefully, good. Have a good night. Thank you. You as well. So yeah, we're going to be talking books. That'll be at 7 p.m. Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Thursday, right here on Bargain Counter Argument. And again, next week for Midweek Motivation, the wife here, story time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I hope to see you there. And if you end up watching it back, that's cool. Appreciate everybody who pays attention to me and my stuff. Bye, Barkity. Hang on. Barkity. And see y'all around.